The most courageous character in Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. Courage is many things to many people. To some, courage must be seen and influence the lives of others to count as courage. To others, courage is any act that takes bravery and a confident mindset. In Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, there are several times different characters show courage. The most courageous out of all of these being Ender Wiggin. He is constantly showing several feats of courage with his violent manners, manipulative ways, and hard-working attitude. Ender develops a unique kind of courage that is clearly represented in the book. In the science fiction classic Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, Ender is the most courageous character. Ender shows his courage in violent situations. In the book, Ender is constantly trapped in a condition which could end negatively for him. Still, Ender stands up to the challenge in a brave manner. One time in which this happened was when Ender had been threatened by Stilton. It was Stilton, of course. He wasn't much bigger than most of the other kids, but he was bigger than Ender, and he had some others with him. Card 6. In this scenario, Ender is outnumbered. Not only is Ender outnumbered, Ender is younger than the threat itself. Ender even considered con- Ender even considered doing anything to Stilton would take deep courage. As soon as they did, Ender kicked out high and hard, catching Stilton square in the breastbone. Card 7. What Ender had done to Stilton is already an example of courage within the first 10 pages. Stilton was clearly much larger than Ender, and yet Ender had the courage to fight him with bravery. Ender knew that Stilton had his friends following him as supporters, and yet he took the risk to attack Stilton. Even though being in unfair circumstances, Ender had the courage to defeat Stilton. This is only one feat of courage, of violent courage in the book, as there are more continuing throughout. Another one, for example, is when Ender used violent courage to triumph against Bonzo. The victory is in similar circumstances to when Ender defeated Stilton. Bonzo had taken classes, and probably more recently than Ender. His reach was better, he was stronger, and he was full of hate. Card 209. Once again, the odds are not in Ender's favor. Bonzo had his crew with him, as well as the fact that he was larger than Ender. To be truthful, Bonzo did fight Ender singularly, but it is still unfair that Bonzo is so much larger than Ender. Still, Ender showed great courage by accepting the fight anyways. At this point in the book, it's not only about who won the fight, it's also about who fought in which way. Ender won the fight, but as he fought, he showed great courage. Accepting the fight was just the first phase of Ender's courage. Ender knew at this moment he might be able to walk out of the room and end the battle, the way he had escaped the battle room after drawing blood. But the battle would only be fought again and again. The only way to end things was to hurt Bonzo enough that that his fear was stronger than his hate. Card 211. The quote represents a large chunk of courage inside of Ender. Leaving the room would have ended the fight, but Ender knew he wanted more. Ender forever stopped the fight, killing off Bonzo with all his courage. It's not completely visible, but doing this to Bonzo did take courage. Hurting someone the size of Bonzo would take courage. By ending it this way, Ender showed great courage through his violence. Throughout the book, Ender shows courage in many ways, one of these ways being through his violence. One more way Ender shows his courage is through his own manipulation. At times, Ender can be manipulative to different people, one of those people actually being himself. In the book, readers can see Ender can be manipulative to himself. Being able to manipulate oneself on the level Ender does actually takes great courage. At the beginning of the book, Ender is manipulating himself into believing who he is not. I am Peter. I'm just like him. And Ender hated himself for that. Card 33. Here, Ender is convinced that he is like Peter. Truthfully, Ender is extremely similar to Peter, mainly in his violent and unmerciful ways. To many readers, when Ender accepts the fact he isn't using courage at all. However, accepting something so demotivating does take courage, especially in Ender's case, when this one thought could and does change his entire pattern of actions. Courage can be internal or external. In this case of Ender's self-manipulation, the courage being displayed is internal. Finally, Ender displays courage through his effort and acceptance of duty. Ender understands his place in the battle school. You made me hate them. Card 35. He knows that he's being manipulated into isolation. Ender realizes that Graf and the entire school is putting all the odds against him. Still, Ender stays strong. In such a case, many would break down and display cowardice. Instead, Ender works harder and shows his courage. Ender's effort is undeniable. Not only does Ender show his effort to be the best, but he also shows effort to fit in. They laughed together, and the two other launchies joined in. Ender's isolation was over. Card 53. Ender had several points where isolation was in the past. This can show courage by showing how Ender does not give up. This resistance takes courage. However, every time Ender gets a little closer to happiness, the battle school adds pressure and more isolation. Once again, this isolation could be torture to the point of internal damage. Even after all this, Ender shows his courage and stays strong. This shows one of en- one of great this shows one of the greatest feats of Ender's internal battle with courage. Ender accepts the duty Ender's acceptance of duty can easily connect to Ender's courage. Ender has had several hard decisions to make in the book that require courage. One of these decisions would be leaving his family to go to battle school. I don't want to go, said Ender, but I will. Card 26. Ender accepts going to battle school, even though it would mean leaving everything behind. For Ender, this would mean to lose his family. To Ender, this would mean to lose Valentine. It takes courage to take everything one has and to just throw it away for the better. Ender knows the consequences of going to battle school. Even so, Ender uses his courage and goes anyways, even though he didn't want to. Ender's courage, when leaving everything behind, cannot be ignored, as this act of courage, as it is this act of courage that sets the entire defeat of the buggers and bringing up of new lives. Even though Ender is clearly the most courageous character, arguments can be made that Valentine Wiggins is the most courageous character. Others may point out that Valentine showed courage when Ender went off to battle school. However, Valentine does not show any sort of courage at that time. He hears Valentine's anguished cry, "Come back to me. I love you forever." Card 26. Valentine does not even accept the fact that Ender is leaving. Instead, she cries for Ender to come back. This is not an action of courage, it's an action of weakness. If Valentine were to actually show courage, she would have either shown more strength in this case. She would have shown more strength in this case. Another case being made is that she showed courage while being Demosthenes. Once again, being Demosthenes is not an act of courage, rather weakness. "I've been deciding," said Peter, "whether to kill you or not." Card 124. Being Demosthenes was not a choice for Valentine. She had been threatened by Peter, and this proves she was not showing courage at all. But not only this, but Valentine's identity is kept secret. Taking an action with no consequences does not require courage. Later on in this book, only when threatened does Valentine take action. For instance, I know who Demosthenes is. She felt a thrill of fear run through her, but said nothing. Here, readers can see that Valentine will do anything to protect herself. She goes to Ender and convinces the little brother she loved to go out and risk his life even more, all because Valentine had been threatened slightly. Some can make the point that it takes courage to send the brother she loved away for the greater good, but this is not true. Valentine didn't believe the action was the right thing to do for anybody but herself. This 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 displays not courage, rather selfishness. Valentine is a character whose courage is not real, unlike Ender's true courage. In the book Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, there is one character's courage that extends past everyone else's. This character is Ender Wiggin. Ender shows his courage in several different forms. Sometimes it is through his violence, having the courage to come up against such menacing foes. Other times, it's internal courage, pushing him into understanding of himself as well as his surroundings. Lastly, it's the courage to understand, pushing him past all limits for the greater good of his people. Ender Wiggins is not just the most courageous character in Ender's Game, but also an inspiring icon to readers everywhere.